Hey, good day, all. This is February the 20th. Hope you all having a wonderful day. Roll into it and have a good, prosperous day and get a lot done. Sorry about our earlier broadcast. Appreciate y'all having patience. We had no sound. I think we have that rectified. Please let me know and give me a minute. I'm going to type out a message here. Just let me know if y'all have any sound or you're hearing everything okay. So it'll take me just a second to do a little typing here. I'm doing a couple of invites, and then we'll get on with the broadcast here in just a moment. I guess you can't do invites and type at the same time. Hey, in the meantime, I want to say something here. I'm being forced for the first time. I usually use Firefox, but you see how everything's being driven and people are forced into things. And basically, you're usually losing your rights. Your data is being collected and all that crapola. But this is the first time I'm doing a broadcast where I'm being forced to use Google's Chrome browser, which I really hate doing. And you should have the free will not to use that option. Hey, Willow, good to see you. Thank you. We got sound? Let me know. I'll toss out the question right now. Thank you again. And I apologize to everybody else who tuned in earlier today. Had no idea, and I don't until you tell me, hey, we can't hear you. So thanks a lot. I want to bring you a little update. Some of y'all are familiar that I'm working with Brother Don. Brother Don is assisted living out there in Atlanta, Georgia. Don doesn't have many problems, but he's really hard on hearing. He got assaulted out there probably about 9 months ago, ended up in the hospital, had to have a whole bunch of stitches. The center is liable for it. They knew that this one gentleman out there was very violent and hostile, yet they did nothing about it. And the man actually physically, and Don's a big man. You know, he's older, but he's a big guy. Fella just came hauling down the hall, attacked him from the rear, beat him to a pulp. His face was in really bad shape. He got cut up real bad, damaged his ears. Don's already hard on hearing, but they made it that a lot worse, and also damaged his teeth. The health center didn't, the assisted living center refused to do anything about it. They told me, Don called me from the hospital probably about 10 o'clock at night, told me he was there. And I contacted the center. I was on with them till about 2 in the morning. They said they were going to be removing that hostile gentleman from the facility first thing in the morning. Of course, they did not do that. They did not do that. They did not get him out there for about 6 weeks or so. So anyway, I've been standing up for Don. Unfortunately or fortunately for Don, either way, I'm the only person he has. Knew Don and Nancy for about 10 years, helped them out on different things. They came back to the States, and she passed away about 3 years ago now. And I drove Don down to Florida. She wanted to put her ashes in the ocean. And he wants me to remember where I took them. So at some point when time and life goes on, that maybe I'll be able to take Don down there at the same location and put him in the ocean there with his wife, Nancy. I'd be honored to do that if I'm able to. But anyway, he gave me, hey, Jody, thank you for tuning in. Sorry we didn't have sound earlier. But anyway, Don made me power of attorney. So I've been standing up for him, and also living facilities. Like I said, this one's out there in Atlanta, Georgia. Don was moved probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago under really odd circumstances. They just suck everybody's money away, and they weren't leaving Don any money. Don said they were requiring him to buy his own toilet paper. Facilities are supposed to provide toilet paper in some very basic necessities. But they've been kind of flim-flamming and racketeering with their clients. I guess you call them clients rather than patients in assisted living, but really abusing these elderly people. And I hear the same thing from Don's girlfriend that he's had out there, and also some other clients out there at this particular facility. But a Sovereign's friend up there out of Tennessee, Tina, she's worked with social services, assisted living facilities for years, and this tends to be the rule rather than the exception. So anyway, that's kind of an update on Don. A lot of people have been standing up. More and more people are standing up for their rights and their liberties. Lazaro's been doing a lot of good broadcasts out here. He's standing up and bringing a lot of other issues to the forefront. Today, there's one article he posted about state lawmakers trying to get homeschoolers for intrusive in-house visits without cause. What I keep telling people, you have to stand up on your own sovereignty. If you don't, you have no rights. Another article that someone posted today said that there's one maxim out there that you take away one right, one generation, after a while, no one has any rights. But they know they have no rights because that's the way they've been conditioned and learned. Well, we here at Sovereign People's Broadcast are trying to educate the people. And there's only one reason that I use the term sovereign. And that term, the government, FBI, and police and all that are using, hey, everybody's a sovereign citizen. Well, that's an oxymoron. That it's not a possibility in law. But the reason, and the only reason I use the term sovereign, is because that's what the law in the United States of America says each and every one of you and us are. We are the sovereigns. As the sovereign, the law even states, it's not the city, county, state, nor even the federal government. It is each one of us individually and collectively. And if you don't know or remember that the term people is both singular and plural in regards to the Constitution. So each one of us individually and collectively are the sovereigns. So for example, you have 1,000 people or sovereigns, either one. You take away one, well, that reduces the rights, powers, and authority of the government, city, county, state, or federal, by one individual. That's why the Declaration of Independence, when it talks about it, is not only your right, but it is the only duty of the people. The government says, well, you've got a duty and a liability. You got to pay these trillions of dollars worth of debt, and that's a different topic. But if you also have the sole and exclusive right to retain, like a friend of mine, Janet, she's been standing up for decades. She's out in Colorado. And it was close to 20 years ago. I'm going, hey, Janet, you're not paying attention to the 9th and 10th Amendment. And it took her 5 years. She wouldn't listen. I said, the 9th Amendment is all rights retained. The 10th Amendment is all powers reserved. Well, after 5 years, she finally figures out the 10th Amendment, all rights reserved. But then she goes, all rights reserved to the states. The 10th Amendment says all rights reserved to the state or to the people. So when are you, the people, I already have, are going to stand up and retain all of your powers? You don't retain your rights, you retain your powers. Why? Look at the 9th Amendment, because your powers come from your rights. So first you have the rights, then you have the powers. So here's a question for you. What rights does the state have? The state only has limited rights and powers and authority which first come from the people. Again, who are the people? The people are the individual, singularly and plurally. So if one being, people or sovereign, takes back their rights and powers, the state lacks those rights, powers, and authority over that one individual. That's what I did a long time ago. That's why, and it's within the law. Now, skipping on a little bit more, I've been working with a lot of people in Wisconsin who are having, and this is a big issue all over the country and growing all over the world, because they're starting to mimic what, for commercial reasons, about children and child protective services. And before I jump into that, I want to remind you, who was it that 15 to 20 years ago started saying that the children are members of the community in the state, and that the state has power and authority over all the children becoming property of the state, just like they did with your houses. Most people don't know it, but the state controls that your private property, your house, belongs to the state. And the statutes, which are not law, they're only color of law, state that you are only a user of your own property that you're paid your livelihood to own. So the state says we actually own it. You are just, and the state calls you a user of your own property. Why would anyone buy a house or anything else just to be a user? That's one reason I go in there and I claim my property prior to purchasing it and through the purchase process as my private property. The state has all these classifications in commerce, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, but everything I tell you is for a reason. It's important for you to know, but you've got to claim yourself and you've got to claim your property. And excuse me, but let's get back to child services here. And earlier, David Jose is doing a lot of hard work and working with people with child protective services and trying to get their children back. One thing I told David didn't have any sound broadcast, is that you really need to listen, and all the fighting you're doing is going to be mostly for naught. You'll win a little struggles here and there, but until the parents and the people in their sovereignty, as the parents they are, decide, and Jody, you or anyone else on here who wants to listen may want to consider, until you take back your rights and your property. And as our founding father said, just as you have rights in your property, you have property in your rights. And that would include being your children. So the state now claims your children through the birth certificates and everything else. People are starting to learn about this. Before it's all conspiracy theory stuff, but all you got to do is look at the bond paper that the name, birth certificates, and that's a whole nother discussion or 5, but you need to stand up and take control of not only yourself, but of your children and of your property, your home. The law tells you how to do this. You don't read the law. Nobody's going to tell you this. And why do you think you go all the way through elementary, junior high, high school, and even into college, but nobody teaches the law unless you go, hey, I want to make a career and be a lawyer? Because they don't want you to know. And it's the same reason the federal government and the police, start talking about this sovereign citizen BS. It's a fabrication that they've made up. You cannot be a sovereign and a citizen at the same time. A citizen is a subject of the state. When did you intend to be a subject of anybody? Probably never. But you go, hey, I are a citizen. Well, the definition of citizen by statute is you are a subject of the state. So that's why I say, hey, I'm not a citizen. I'm neither a citizen or a resident, a person. I am me. I am one of the people. And if you read the laws or you look at your traffic ticket, it never says people. You look at the legislation, it doesn't say people. Why? Because they have no authority over you and I, the people. But you're not standing up and saying you're the people. So anyway, you need to take your property back. You need to take ownership of yourself, which Google's taking all that away. Facebook's starting to block everything. YouTube's doing the same thing. That gets back to why we have spnwo.com. It belongs to the people, but people have not been smart enough to listen and pay attention and start supporting their own system that was created for you, the people, which will never be owned by corporations or governments where your data is your data. But one day maybe you'll wake up. In the meantime, the only way to take things back is to make a declaration. And again, that's in the law. You hadn't read it, you don't know it. I keep telling you, but nobody's listening. So you have to make a decree. Once you make the decree, then you have the legal foundation that the government, the statutes, the laws cannot trump. They cannot go over that. Because why? Because the law says you're the sovereign. And the law also states that the decree of the sovereign makes law. Well, that means that you have to declare it. So all those people in child protective services and having your children ripped off and stolen and nasty, nasty things are going on. Nasty things. Working with a lady over there in Tennessee. Her daughter was taken probably about 2 or 3 months. I don't think 3 months, maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And her daughter's 16 years old, real cute thing, very intelligent, already has scholarships to go to colleges and things. Real bright gal, but they have moved her to 3 or 4 different schools already. She's already been in 5 to 6 different foster homes. She's she's been molested and she's afraid of being raped. They never tell the parents, don't allow the parents to know where their children are. But again, you haven't taken control of your rights, your property, of yourself and of your children. Again, the only way to do it, like I said, David Jose, you're doing a great job and you're helping a lot of people reportedly. But to my knowledge, you have yet declared or made a decree of anything. And the people, and I can help you with that, but you got to make a declaration for yourself and for your children, for your property, whether it's your automobile. That's another dang topic, but a lot more people are standing up. People are starting to learn and read and understand that by law, you don't have to register your private property, your private automobile. Now, if you have an automobile, like an ambulance, and you're using it in commerce to pick up people, rush them to the hospital, whatever you're doing, or you're working on power poles and that's your truck that you use to work on power poles in commerce for the city or something like that, you have to register. You have to have a driver's license because driving is in commerce. When you register a vehicle is a commercial term. They don't use automobile, they use vehicle because it's a commercial term. That's in commerce. Driver is in commerce. Anytime you register anything with the city, county, state, or federal government, you are giving it to them. It becomes their property, their commodity to trade, exchange, or whatever, and tell you what you can and cannot do with. So stop doing it. Stand on your sovereignty, stand as the people you are, And I'm not against, you got to know how to drive. It's good to have tests and know what you're doing and be responsible. But your private property is yours. And once you register it, it becomes property of the state. So a lot more people are understanding, and some people are rescinding your signature from the state on your driver's license. You're not required to have it. Go get your lessons or whatever. Drive responsibility, be responsible for yourself. You have an accident. Long time ago, I didn't have a driver's license, and that's a different story. I didn't lose it. It wasn't suspended. I rescinded my signature. I finally read the law and decided I'm not going to be the subject of the state anymore. My property is my property. I paid for my own darn car. I don't need your certificate of title, which be the state owns the title, and that goes to a whole new story, but they did it for a reason, because they have to trade that. The country's been in so much debt that they had to acquire all property, so the state claims it. Now, all of that is unlawful. People don't know it, even when it is issued or decreed by the President of the United States. An unlawful act is always unlawful from inception. And once even if they do it, just because everybody, the president said this, so we got to do that. If it's unlawful, it's unlawful. And most statutes, in case you don't know, are unlawful. So anyway, I'm doing a big work effort with people, with children under Child Protective Services. I don't want to drag this out, but I strongly suggest that, number one, you listen. Number two, you learn and look at making a decree. You got to reclaim yourself first. Then reclaim your children. So you set them free with rights, powers that come from the Constitution. But let me just back up again, and I'm not getting on a religious thing. All rights come from God. You have the only thing God gave you is your free will. And that way, and Vladimir Putin talked about it, which is God gave you your free will, and Vladimir Putin talks about self-determination, which the founding fathers of America talked about as well. So you have self-determination. Vladimir Putin said, for example, I think he's talking about Poland, I may not have that correct, but he said the people have the sole and exclusive right to self-govern, and they do not need to go to their city, county, state, or federal government. He said, to their government, I'm adding the rest of it, to ask permission to be free. You just make the declaration that you are. So people wake up, and you see how everything is going, how President Trump, I'm not totally sold on President Trump. He's doing an excellent job. He's putting himself through stuff that no one would be putting themselves through. He doesn't have to do that, but he loves his country. He loves his country that much to endure all the pounding that he takes every single day. The rest of the Americans out here who are standing, the only time that they or I or we get support is by people who care about us. If people are in the trenches fighting for you and for your rights and your liberties, do a little bit of whatever it is that you can to support them. It's like Trent out in Colorado, or Mark Stevens. I think Mark is in Arizona. I talked to Mark years ago. He doesn't have a driver's license, but he drives everywhere. But the way he gets around is somebody else puts a damn tag on his car, pays for it, it's registered in their name or whatever. And the only reason that's done is to keep the laser tags off. And people think about it. The police are so power hungry and control freaks, frankly. you know, but it's supported by corporations because they want to make money and sell, you know, we spy on you crap and everything else. But, you know, why do you go down the street, the roads, and all the cameras, the police are all loaded with lasers. The standard ones now have 5 cameras on their car. And they don't have to do anything. They just drive down the road. All your plates are scanned. It sends off signal. He knows everything about you instantly. Think about this. Look up the picture of President Trump in Saudi Arabia. And they're standing in there and they've got their hand on this globe. Do you even have a clue of what that is? Do you even think about it? I've got a dang good clue of what that is. That's called a NOC, called a Network Operations Control Center. I've been over them. I've had to design them and I've built them out. Typically, historically, they were all mostly for telecommunications. Phone companies never been your friend. Is one of your worst enemies. Google's worse than that now. But those are network operation control centers. That was a network operation control center for the globe, guys. Now let that sink in, if it can sink in. All right, a lot of people can't get, well, I'm not going to say that. But anyway, I'm supporting a lot of people here. The world is changing, and it's not. It's changing in very negative ways. More and more people are standing up. They're taking on the fight, and they're trying to defend you and your rights. Like Mandy. Mandy was on the call that didn't have any sound. Mandy Harborn, a big blessing to her. She's out of New Zealand. And I call her an American. She's in New Zealand. She didn't go to the United States government, ask permission or anything like that. She's never even been here. I call her a good American because daily she stands on the principles and foundations of the United States of America in support of the Constitution. Excuse me. She and a lot of other people around the world, everybody's looking to the United States of America. That's why Trump is getting pounded, and the American people are too. You know, they're trying to divide us and everything else because once America falls, that's it. America is the only country in the world where by law, well, let me back up. By law is important. But America is the only country which is rightly or wrongly done, because a lot of people were slaughtered and the Indians were pretty much wiped out. And I really hate all of that. But America is the only country that was bound on faith, not religion, but faith in God. And God either exists or he doesn't. Whether you believe in him or not doesn't change the fact that a God exists. So you may want to consider that. But anyway, we'll go ahead and shut that down for now. A lot of people are standing up. They need your support. If anybody has half a brain, you know, look at spnwo.com. It's designed and it's built for you. You want to change your election system? We're doing it. And it can be done. We can change the world in frickin' 90 days. But there are not enough people out there listening. Not only not enough people listening, there are not enough with the, I want to say intelligence or whatever, but who make the decision to take corrective action. And what I've been saying for years and years ago, you first have to right yourself. Once you right yourself, you can help others right themselves by their free will. You don't tell them how to do it. They just need to listen and learn and make their own decisions. That's the only rule in spirit world is to guide. You can never direct. You can never tell anybody what to do. You put out information and you let them by their own free will choose. That's why things are just so frustrating to insane for people like me. I mean, because you know how things can be and how be, and you know how to pull the parts and pieces together, from replacing social security systems to having an election system that's owned and controlled by the people, to having systems where your data is actually belongs to you, where you correct legislation. And these systems, political systems, are pretty much trash at this point. But there is a way for the people to right themselves. But they got to learn to listen, and then they make their own free will decisions. So you can build it over here as long, while you're having to deal with the reality of the corporate systems now, because governments are all corporations now. They converted when they went all to statutes and universal commercial code and all that mess. But anyway, thank you for standing up. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Again, I'm standing and fighting for a lot of people right now. The children, Wisconsin's starting to stand up and doing a good job as a state. And I'm being fairly instrumental in that. The elderly and the assisted living for centers, I want to bring that to the forefront even more. Lazaro's been doing an excellent job. He was the first one that I know of. I think he's the one that did the original research on the Uranium One deal, calling out the Clintons and everything else. And let me tell you this, the people that are standing up, they're sacrificing a lot, and they take a lot of abuse, and it's dangerous to deadly for them. Just like Robert Lawrence down in Alabama in December 31st, 2014, they just killed him. He didn't have a state ID. He had read the law and just goes, I'm not doing that. All he was doing was turning in a dog or a cat. I've heard both. And I actually been in touch with the cousins there, but he didn't discuss that part. He's turning an animal into humane society. And they go, oh, we cannot take your driver's license. Well, he didn't have a driver's license. He was with his girlfriend. She was driving whatever. He didn't even have to have one. But they made it a big issue because they had a security guard. Used to be a police gal, got injured. So now she's a security guard. So she calls the cops on him. They come out there, and he just said, hey, man, I just want to leave. I just trying to drop off this animal that I found that was abandoned, and they ended up killing him and murdering him right then and there. Of course, as is typical, nothing ever happens to the political offenders. Anyway, I'll leave it at there. God bless y'all. Y'all have a good, productive day. Thank you for all your support. Start standing and living your sovereignty daily. That's why I put it on the broadcast. And look down here at the bottom. Where'd my finger go? Right down here. I put the law on there. It doesn't demonize anyone. The only reason the term's there is not against the FBI or police officers. It's not a sovereign citizen BS thing or any of that. They just use the word to demonize the word, to put fear in the people, so they won't learn that they are the sovereigns. They are over the government, including all the ones that don't want to demonize this for you. So that's what the law states right there. The law states that you are the sovereign. Not only are the people individually and collectively the sovereign, it states right there, you always have been. So even whether you accept it or not, even today, the law even states that you are sovereign and your rights are such that you cannot even give those rights away, even if you wanted to. So while you have a state running back and says, okay, we're going to tax you for the rainwater on your house, you cannot own your house, you are a user. The president determined that in 1933, which is against the law. You can't do it. It can't be done. So anyway, just think. listen and learn, think, make your own free will decisions. I encourage you to consider learning to self-govern. And you do it just by living your sovereignty daily. So bless you all. Thank you for your support and have a super day. Be safe out there.